Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. Good morning and welcome to Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists. I'm Amy Evans. I'm a member of SFUU. I've been here about 14 years and I'm a member of the worship committee. I'm joined today by Matt Meyer. Matt's presence at our service today is one of the rare gifts of the pandemic. Matt is a sought-after worship leader in UU congregation, and Matt lives in Boston, so getting him to be with us today, as I say, is a unique gift. Matt's an accomplished drummer and has guest-led worship at hundreds of UU congregations and at many general assemblies. Welcome, Matt. We're excited to have you here today. Our minister, AJ Van Tyne, is in the pulpit about 3 times a month. When he's not here, members of the congregation typically lead us in worship, and sometimes, like today, we have guests. In addition to leading worship, our music today will also be provided by Matt. He has a degree in hand drumming from Berklee College of Music and has participated in drumming circles around the world. You are all welcome here today in all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness. You are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. With all the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. Whether you come feeling whole, feeling broken, or anywhere in between, you are welcome here. No matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. I especially welcome newcomers today. Every Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times to get to know us. Now, get comfortable, put aside those distracting devices, and let our prelude begin our worship together.
Well, I'd like to invite you all to sing along at home. Even though you all are muted, we can still breathe together even if we can't hear each other. And this is a great time to try out some bold new harmonies that you might not have had the courage to try if others could hear you. So I encourage you to sing out along with the song. Blessed Motion is a song written by Annie Zylstra, and it was written when she was inspired by words of Martin Prechtel as he spoke of what it was like to survive an earthquake in Guatemala. He said that it was an incredible thing to see the ground beneath his feet, that which had always been so permanent, that which had always been so solid, suddenly rise up in motion. And he said the myth of believing in solid ground is a myth believed by those that live on the earth rather than as a part of it. I know I've been struggling to feel grounded these last few months as it feels like the ground beneath me is shifting constantly. And so I invite you into that spirit of this song to find grounding even as things are in motion. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean, all moves on in perfect motion. All is change and ever rolling ocean. All moves on. I'll sing that low part 2 times through again. perfect motion, all is change and never rolling ocean, all moves on in perfect motion, all is change and ever rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground. I saw the earth in motion, the wind of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, and the wind of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, and the wind of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion.
Thank you, Matt. So let's light our chalices together as I read from these words in our gray hymnal. Oh, sing a new song to the eternal. Shout praise, all earth. Break into music and song. Praise the eternal with the lyre and song. Let the sea and all within it thunder praise. The world and its inhabitants, let rivers clap their hands. Let mountains sing in chorus. Oh, sing a new song to the eternal. So Matt, I mixed up the prelude and the opening hymn. So if you want to play a little ditty before your story for all ages.
Let's go right into the story.
All right, let's just do it.
So this is a story I'd love to share with you all called Miriam and the Tambourine. Now, Miriam was just about to enter the 4th grade, and she was thrilled because 4th grade was the year at her school when all of the students got to learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. And Miriam loved music, so she was ready. Did any of you ever play in the school band or the school orchestra? Can you wave your hands like this? Can I see you? Oh, a whole bunch of us. So you know the excitement and also the terror of walking into the orchestra room for the first time. Miriam showed up extra early on the first day, and she looked around at all of those instruments, wondering which one she would get to play. There was a giant bass drum. There were beautiful violins, shiny brass trumpets. She saw her teacher, Miss Berman, there, and she said, "Here I am. What instrument do you need me to play?" The teacher looked at her and said, "Miriam, right? I think I've got just the instrument for you." And she disappeared into her office and came out a moment later with a tambourine. "A tambourine," she said. "Well, is that even an instrument?" "Of course," said Ms. Berman. "Every great orchestra needs a great tambourine player, and you are our tambourine player." Well, Miriam took the tambourine, but for the whole rehearsal all day long, she just had to play the same rhythm over and over. It went like this. It went dot, 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 dot. Can you all try that? Dot, 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 dot. When she came back to school the next day, the whole rehearsal all day long, it was that same rhythm again, over and over. It went dot, 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 dot. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the whole rest of the week, it was that same rhythm over and over and over. It went dot, 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 dot. So you might guess that Miriam was not any more excited about the tambourine at the end of the week than she had been at the beginning. So when she went to church with her family that Sunday, she was feeling pretty sad about it. This was pre-COVID times, of course, and she sat down in her Sunday school class, and her teacher, Mahesh, noticed that she was looking down. He asked her about it, and she said, well, I was so excited to learn to play an instrument and to play in the school orchestra and make music, but I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes dot, 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 dot. "The tambourine," Mahesh said. He said, "Did you know that where my family is from in southern India, we call the tambourine a kanjira?" Can you say kanjira? He said, "People spend their whole lives learning to master the kanjira. It's a wonderfully beautiful but also complex instrument. And one of the things about the kanjira is that every sound you can play on it, you can also sing. You can also speak the syllables and the rhythms of it. And so people put the rhythms together to create, whole books of the poetry of the kanjira. Takita tum, kuta dengi, na tum tum, ta tum." People create all this poetry out of the rhythms and the music of the kanjira. Where I come from, the tambourine is an instrument for poetry and, well, for beauty. "Poetry and beauty," Miriam said. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. After church, Miriam was sitting by herself, and a family friend, Anna, came and sat with her. Anna remembered. She said, "This was the week you were going to start 4th grade, right? And learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. How's it going?" "Well," Miriam said, "I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes dot, 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 dot." "The tambourine," Anna said. She said, "Did you know that where my family is from in Brazil, we call the tambourine a pandeiro?" Can you say pandeiro? She said, "People have been playing the pandeiro for generations in Brazil. In fact," she said, "when my ancestors were brought to Brazil as enslaved people, they would play the pandeiro to make music and bring their community to be together, to sing and dance and take care of each other, even when times were so hard. And they even used the music of the pandeiro to secretly practice martial arts, so they could protect themselves against the people that held them as slaves. Where I come from, the tambourine is an instrument for safety and for community." "Safety and community," Miriam said. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. So Miriam was thinking about all of this when she went back to school the next day. She saw her teacher, Miss Berman, there, and she told her about the pandeiro and the kanjira, about poetry and beauty and safety and community. But she said, "I don't know what any of that has to do with me, though. I'm still playing the same rhythm all week long that goes dot, 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 dot." "Well," Miss Berman said. She said, "Miriam, do you know where your name comes from?" She said, "Of course, from my parents." Well, right, said Miss Berman, but do you know who Miriam was? She said, in your family's history, there's a story of the ancient Israelites fleeing slavery in Egypt and traveling, making a long journey to a better place, a land of freedom ahead. And while they were on that journey, on their way to freedom, they had a wonderful celebration, a sacred celebration to celebrate that journey they were making. And it was a woman named Miriam with her tambourine who got that celebration started. She was one of the first musicians in recorded history. And women just like her would play the tambourine in ancient Israel and all over the Middle East in ancient times for festivals and weddings and celebrations. In your family's history, the tambourine was a way of celebrating the journey towards love and towards freedom. Freedom and love, Miriam said. Well, that sounds pretty good. Now, Miriam eventually went on to try out a lot of the other instruments in the orchestra. She played bass drum a little bit and took some violin lessons and played the trumpet for a while. But she always remembered this story of the tambourine, how all around the world and all throughout history, people had taken the simplest of instruments, the most basic tools they had in their hands, and they found ways to use them to shape the world around them, to create poetry and beauty, to foster safety and community, to celebrate the journey we're all trying to make towards love and towards freedom. I think that's a little bit of what we do here on Sunday mornings when we gather together in whatever ways we gather together, is that we come together not just to remind each other of the values that are most important to us, but to think together and even challenge each other, to think of how we can use whatever instruments, whatever tools we may have access to, whatever tools we may have in our hands, and practice using them to make this the kind of world that we want to live in together. So thank you all for helping me with the story.
Each Sunday, we set aside time to reflect on the joys and sorrows in our lives and in the life of this gathered community. Let us enter into a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. Feel the earth beneath your feet as it supports you. Feel the love of this community as it surrounds you and enfolds you. Feel your breath as it flows in and out of your body. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to your heart. How is it with your heart? Does it feel whole, shielded by intellect, cocooned by reason, closed to feeling? Or is it broken, too fragile to touch, brimming with the pain of loss? Or has your heart been broken and healed so many times that it now lies open to the world, knowing that true growth comes not without pain, those tears that may wear us down, that we may carry the hearts of others, even when our own is too heavy for us to bear. None of us have an unblemished heart, not one. For such perfection can only be found in death, and we who are alive still have much to heal. Now let us give thanks for the broken places in our hearts and in our lives, for it is only through such brokenness that we can truly touch one another, and only through touching one another that the world may be healed. Let us then give thanks for the brokenness that we feel. Our community here at SFUU is a caring, loving community. We honor that by sharing joys and sorrows. This week, we pray for those affected by what feels like constant fires in our state. We pray for their safety, and we pray for rain. From our own community, Paul and Rick share the joy that their son David and his teenage children, Jonathan and Michaela, have all come through a bout of COVID-19 and are feeling well again. They feel sorrow that they had to go through this, but joy that their symptoms were minor and are already behind them. May many others also experience a similar minor episode if they do test positive for this virus. We're going to go into a time of meditation, prayer, personal reflection, as Matt gives us some of his beautiful drumming to meditate to.
Our reading this morning comes from Mickey Scott Bay Jones in her Invitation to Brave Space. Together, we will create brave space. Because there is no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We have all caused wounds. We all carry scars. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and more love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Generosity is a spiritual practice of this congregation. When we offer our time, our talents, and our treasure, we deepen our engagement and become part of building the beloved community together. As part of our ethic of generosity, we also split our collection plate with a local community organization aligned with our values. This month, the Share the Plate recipient is the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet. To support them and SFUU today, you can navigate to our website and click Give to SFUU. Here, you can donate to SFUU at any time for our Share the Plate program or for your pledge directly to SFUU. You can also download the app. It's called Give Plus Mobile, where all you have to do is create an account and put in your zip code, and then you'll select SFUU to give. Instructions and links for the app are at the bottom of the Give page at mysfuu.org. And there's always low tech. You may mail donations and pledges directly to church at our 190 Finley Street address, which is also on our website. If this is one of your first times visiting, please know that you are our guest and there is no expectation that you contribute. We'll now get another treat from Matt for our offertory music.
Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. Listen, my people, we bring the power. La libertad es la única bandera. Liberty is the only flag. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal.
And thank all of you for your donations, for the work of this congregation, and for the work of the Auburn Interfaith Food Closet.
Well, I start just about every day with a to-do list, perhaps like some of you. Usually it is scribbled on a little post-it note in the corner of my desk, and between you and me, it's usually an overly ambitious to-do list. I rarely get through it all in a given day. And one of the things that I often struggle to check off the list is making time for writing. Writing is something that's important to me. It's a spiritual practice. It's something I'm dedicated to, and it's something I rarely do. One of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, talks about how hard it is, in fact, to just sit down every day and put your butt in the chair and write. She talks about this saying, the discouraging voices will hound you. This is all piffle, they will say. And they may be right. What you are doing may just be practice, but practice is how you're going to get better. Some of the best writing advice I ever got was from a teacher who told me, for now, don't write. Just write what you would write if you were going to write. I sometimes feel like I haven't written hardly anything in all the years since I got that advice, but I have written a lot about what I would write if I did write. You might call this the practice of practicing, learning how to practice. The demons of perfectionism stand in the way of writing, just as they stand in the way of creative risk-taking in general. And this is unfortunate because creating a life for yourself that doesn't yet exist requires some creative risk-taking. Certainly in uncertain and anxious times like these, just being your best self on any given day requires setting aside the discouraging voices that hound us. And the work of imagining a new world of justice and equity and compassion amidst the chaos and brokenness and violence and racism that surrounds us in this world. Well, even just imagining that world requires setting aside the voices that say your efforts are just piffle. When the demons of perfectionism show up like this for me, I try to practice the practicing of showing up for myself and for others. Learning how to practice has been a central part of my life as a musician. One of the requirements for all students at Berklee College of Music, where I attended years ago, is 4 semesters of ear training, which is learning to sing music just by reading the notes on a page and learning to write down music just by listening to it. Now, when I began school, I knew that there certainly were some people out there who were capable of this kind of magic, but it seemed impossible to me. It seemed like some kind of Harry Potter nonsense. Like you might as well ask me to sit at my desk and make a feather float in the air using my conductor's baton. I remember the first day of your training class, there was a sort of nervous silence among us students. Silence, that is, except for one student who was quite loud in his nervousness. This one student interrupted the teacher in the first few minutes of the first day of ear training to say that he was worried that the class was going to be too advanced for him. The teacher kindly paused his introductions to respond, saying that we had all taken entrance exams and he was sure we'd been placed in the appropriate class. The teacher tried to continue, but was interrupted again. Well, said the man, is this the very lowest class? Because I need to be in the very lowest class. Now, you could tell the teacher was a little nervous and looked around the room sheepishly. You could tell he didn't really want to answer that, yes, this was in fact a class of the most very basic students. Well, it is ear training 101, he said, so it is the lowest. There is, I guess, a class for people that have previously failed the 101, but you all are just about the lowest. Now, some of the other students giggled a little bit at this one man's anxieties, but I was actually kind of glad to hear that someone was questioning the absurd notion that sight singing even could be taught. I don't know what happened next for that student, but he never came back to a second day of class. Not because anything we did on the first day was in fact too hard for him, I'm sure, but I think he just lacked a belief that improvement was even possible. I kept going, thinking that if other folks had done this before, generations of students before me, I guess it must be possible somehow, and I made a commitment to at least practice the material. I've always remembered this other student, though, who gave up before he started. It's not just that he didn't try to become a master at ear training, it's that he didn't even try the practicing of it, which always struck me as the real loss. When the discouraging voices hound me, I sometimes think of this student, and I remind myself that maybe for now the work I'm doing is just practice, but practice is how I'm going to get better. These last few months, as well as the coming weeks leading up to the election, are a time of uprisings calling for change, real change, systemic change, calling on those in power which in some ways is all of us, to play a different role, to learn a new tune. Particularly for white people, this is a time to practice some new skills and learn to play some new roles in our community. A time for listening in deeper ways we haven't always done so well before, and having some hard conversations we haven't yet practiced enough. Fellow white folks, when you hear people of color making demands these days, now is a time to practice amplifying those demands by repeating them in calls to your representatives and to your colleagues and to your family. If you've inherited wealth that was accumulated in a time of systematic racial segregation, which is true of all wealth in this country, it is time to practice giving it away. If your muscle memory has been to call the police when something goes wrong, now is a time to practice something different, learning new skills and developing new policies and programs and connections for community safety. I know I won't all of a sudden do all of these things, certainly, but I will practice the doing of them. Musicians know as well as anyone that muscle memory is very real. That consistent practicing changes the very structure of our brains, rewiring our circuitry and forging new connections and new possibilities. No one is born a musician. Musicians are just the ones that learned how to practice. Even songbirds need elder birds to sing to them and teach them the tunes. Practice doesn't make music perfect, but it makes music possible. And so let us practice the practicing, showing up for ourselves and others to build a new world of justice and equity and compassion. Practice won't make the world perfect, but it makes a better world possible. Someday, perhaps someday, I want to be a true expert in justice and compassion, even when anxiety moves in the air like a storm. Someday I want to be well practiced at creating that brave space, even when there is no such thing as safe space. Someday I want to be masterful at amplifying the voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. Someday I want to be a part of transforming our so-called justice system that has hurt so many so deeply. These are daunting tasks, to be sure. On most days, learning to transcribe a symphony by ear seems more manageable. But that's okay, because for now I don't have to do all of those things. I just need to practice doing what I would do if I were doing them. And so, dear ones, don't promise to be your best self today. Just be the person you would be if you were practicing being your best self. Don't try to rebuild a new world in the image of love this week. Just practice doing what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We all have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. And so let us start together, and let us grow together, and let us practice together, side by side. May it be so.
Thank you, Matt. If I didn't know any better, I would have accused my friend Suzanne of setting Matt up for that beautiful sermon, because she is starting off an anti-racism, anti-oppression book club. So I would encourage you, if you have not seen that announcement, to reach out to Suzanne. Just a great tie-in. I couldn't resist. All right, so we're going to get one last beautiful music from Matt for our closing hymn.
Again, I invite you to sing along. Let the life I lead speak for me. I originally heard that this song was a traditional Irish folk tune, but it seems that it perhaps was actually written by a 70s R&B group called the Contemplation. Either way, I invite you to sing along. As we go from each other this morning, beloveds, don't promise to be your best self today. Just be the person you would be if you were practicing being your best self. Don't try to rebuild a new world in the image of love this week. Just practice doing what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow, and so let us start together and grow together, and let us practice together. Go in love, go in peace, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so join me and we'll extinguish our chalices together, ending this wonderful service. And please join us as we say our closing words. As we go forth, may we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Blessed be.